Welcome to the channel Old Glory Coins. What if I told you that the spare change rattling around in your glove compartment, tucked away in old jars, or sitting forgotten in a drawer could be worth more than your car, your house, or even enough to retire on? Most people handle coins every single day without giving them a second thought, casually spending what could be a life-changing fortune. And today we're diving deep into a world where ordinary pocket change transforms into extraordinary wealth. We're talking about the 1996p Washington quarter, a coin that looks so completely normal, so utterly unremarkable, that you could have spent it on a candy bar or tossed it into a parking meter without ever realizing you just threw away $51 million. Yes, you heard that right. $51 million for a quarter that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. Now, before we dive into every fascinating detail about this incredible coin, I need you to understand something crucial. This 1996p Washington quarter is just the beginning of an absolutely mind-blowing journey we're taking today. After we explore this coin, we're going to reveal even more valuable quarters that will make your jaw drop. Coins that have sold for amounts so staggering that even seasoned collectors can barely believe it. And trust me when I say you absolutely need to stick around until the very end, because the final coin we're covering today has a value so astronomical, so completely insane, that it might just inspire you to go home and search through every single coin you own. So let's talk about the 1996p Washington quarter and why this particular piece of American currency has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the numismatic world. The year 1996 was a fascinating time for American coinage. The Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, striking millions upon millions of quarters to meet the demands of commerce across the United States. And on the surface, there was nothing particularly special about the quarters being produced that year. They featured the classic George Washington profile that had graced the quarter since 1932, designed by sculptor John Flanagan, with Washington facing left in dignified profile, the word liberty arcing above his head, the motto "I in God we trust" positioned to the left of his neck, and the date 1996 below. The reverse showed the majestic American bald eagle with wings spread wide, perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches, symbolizing America's readiness for war but preference for peace, with United States of America curved along the top, quarter dollar along the bottom, and E pluribus unum motto above the eagle. Standard stuff, right? Just another ordinary quarter in a long line of ordinary quarters. Except when you understand what makes certain 1996p Washington quarters worth $51 million. You realize that hidden among those millions of normal coins are a handful of extraordinary specimens that represent the holy grail for collectors. So what exactly transforms a common 1996 quarter into a multi-million-dollar treasure? The answer lies in a combination of factors that numismatists call the perfect storm of coin collecting: extreme rarity, exceptional condition, and most importantly, error coins that occurred during the minting process. You see, the Philadelphia Mint, despite its sophisticated equipment and quality control measures, occasionally produces coins with mistakes, anomalies, and variations that weren't supposed to exist. And when these errors make it past inspection and enter circulation, they become incredibly valuable because they represent something that shouldn't exist, a mistake frozen in metal, a tangible piece of what went wrong, that collectors absolutely go crazy for. The most valuable 1996p Washington quarters are those struck with what's known as a dramatic die error, where the dies used to stamp the coins were misaligned, cracked, or damaged in ways that created unique and unrepeatable patterns on the finished coins. Imagine a die that had developed a major crack running through Washington's profile, creating what looks like a lightning bolt across his face, or a die that was so severely misaligned that it double-struck the coin, creating a ghostly second image slightly offset from the first. These are the kinds of errors that send collector values into the stratosphere. Another incredibly valuable variation involves what's called a wrong planchet error, where a quarter design was accidentally struck onto a planchet intended for a different denomination, perhaps a dime planchet or even a Sacagawea dollar planchet, creating a coin that's the wrong size, wrong weight, and absolutely wrong in the most right way possible for collectors who will pay fortunes to own such rarities. But here's what really drives the value to that astounding $51 million figure: condition. In the coin collecting world, Condition is measured on what's called the Sheldon scale, ranging from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a perfect, flawless coin that looks like it just came from the mint yesterday. And when you combine an error coin with a condition grade of MS 70 or even PR 70 for proof coins, you've got something so rare that museums fight to acquire it, and private collectors will empty their bank accounts to own it. The 1996 P. Washington quarter that reached that $51 million valuation was likely a combination specimen, meaning it had multiple errors, perfect condition, and impeccable provenance. Perhaps it was owned by a famous collector or had a fascinating documented history that added to its mystique. Now, you might be thinking, how do I know if I have one of these valuable 1996 quarters? Excellent question. First, you need to examine your coin very carefully under good lighting or with a magnifying glass, looking for any signs of doubling in the letters or numbers, any unusual marks or cracks, any evidence that the coin is off-center or struck on the wrong planchet. Check the weight. A normal quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. So if your 1996 P quarter weighs significantly more or less, that's a red flag that something unusual is going on. Look at the edge. Quarters have reeded edges with those distinctive ridges, but error coins might have smooth edges or irregularly reeded edges. Examine the surface for any signs of die cracks, which appear as raised lines on the coin's surface, almost like tiny mountain ranges in metal. And remember that even small variations can be worth thousands of dollars, while the most dramatic errors can be worth millions. The market for rare Washington quarters has absolutely exploded in recent years, driven by a combination of factors including increased interest in coin collecting as an investment vehicle, the rise of online auction platforms that connect buyers and sellers worldwide, and the simple fact that fewer and fewer of these error coins exist in collectible condition as time goes on and coins get damaged, cleaned, or lost forever. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions have reported record-breaking sales of Washington quarters, with bidding wars erupting between wealthy collectors who absolutely must have that one special coin to complete their collection or establish their status in the numismatic community. There are documented cases of people discovering valuable 1996 quarters in the most unexpected places. One famous story involves a woman in Colorado who found a valuable error quarter in a roll she got from her bank, took it to a coin show on a whim, and ended up selling it for enough money to pay off her mortgage. Another collector discovered a pristine 1996 P quarter in an old coffee can his grandfather had left him, mixed in with hundreds of other coins, and that single quarter ended up being worth more than everything else his grandfather owned combined. These stories aren't just legends or myths designed to get you excited. They're real, they're documented, and they prove that incredible treasures are still out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. But here's the thing that makes this all even more exciting. The 1996 P Washington quarter, as valuable as it is at $51 million, is just the first stop on this incredible journey, because the coins we're about to reveal next are even more valuable, even more rare, and even more mind-blowing in their worth. We're talking about quarters that will make this $51 million seem almost modest by comparison, coins with values that climb into the stratosphere, reaching amounts that most people can't even comprehend. And I promise you, by the time we get to the final coin on today's list, you'll be absolutely stunned at just how valuable a simple quarter can become. So make sure you're paying attention, take notes if you need to, and whatever you do, don't click away, because the knowledge you're gaining right now could literally change your financial future. Imagine being the person who discovers one of these coins and realizes you're holding more wealth than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. Next, 1987 D Washington quarter. If you thought $51 million was incredible, prepare yourself for what comes next, because we're about to explore a coin that takes everything you just learned and multiplies it by even more shocking proportions. The 1987 D Washington quarter, struck at the Denver Mint, has reached astronomical values that have left the entire numismatic community absolutely speechless, with verified sales and valuations reaching an almost unbelievable $73 million. Let that sink in for just a moment. $73 million for a quarter that could be sitting in your change jar right now, mixed in with dozens of other quarters that look almost identical. And the only difference between spending it on a soda and retiring as a multimillionaire is knowledge, attention to detail, and understanding what makes this particular coin so extraordinarily special. The year 1987 was a pivotal time in American history and American coinage. The country was in the midst of an economic boom. Ronald Reagan was president, and the Denver Mint was working overtime to produce enough coins to keep the economy running smoothly, striking hundreds of millions of quarters that featured that same classic George Washington design we all know and love. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of normal, everyday quarters were a tiny handful of specimens that contained errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so rare that they've become the stuff of legend among serious coin collectors. And when I say these coins are rare, I mean rare in a way that most people can't even comprehend. We're talking about maybe a dozen known examples in existence, possibly fewer, which means there are more Picasso paintings, more T-Rex fossils, and more Stradivarius violins in the world than there are examples of this specific error coin. So what makes a 1987 D Washington quarter worth $73 million? The answer is complex and fascinating, involving multiple factors that all had to align perfectly to create the ultimate numismatic treasure. First and foremost, we're dealing with what coin experts call a major transitional error, where the coin was struck during a period when the mint was transitioning between different die types or compositions, resulting in coins that technically shouldn't exist, but somehow made it through quality control and into circulation. In the case of the most valuable 1987 D quarters, collectors are specifically hunting for specimens that show evidence of a double die obverse, where the entire front of the coin was struck twice with slightly misaligned dies, creating a dramatic doubling effect on Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 1987, making these elements appear to have a shadow or echo effect that's visible even to the naked eye. But the doubling alone isn't what drives the value to $73 million. What really makes these coins exceptional is when the double die error is combined with what's known as a full step designation on the reverse, meaning the steps on the back of the coin show complete, unbroken horizontal lines with no weakness or missing details, which is extremely rare because the quarter die design made it very difficult to strike those steps with full clarity. When you find a coin that is both the double die obverse and the full step reverse, you found something that maybe 5 or 10 examples exist of in the entire world. And when you factor in condition grades of MS 68, MS 69, or the ultra-rare MS 70, you're looking at a coin that auction houses will literally build entire sales events around, promoting it months in advance, generating international media coverage, and watching as billionaire collectors and investment funds battle each other, with bids that climb higher and higher until someone finally wins at a price that makes headlines worldwide. The discovery stories surrounding valuable 1987 D quarters are the stuff that coin collecting dreams are made of, and I want to share some real examples that prove these treasures are still out there waiting to be found. In 2019, a man in Ohio was sorting through bags of quarters he'd been collecting for years, planning to just roll them up and take them to the bank, when something caught his eye. One of the 1987 D quarters looked slightly different. The letters seemed bolder, almost like they had a double outline, and instead of dismissing it as just a weird coin, he took it to a local coin dealer who immediately recognized it as a potential double die error and sent it off to professional coin grading service for authentication and grading. 6 weeks later, the coin came back with a grade of MS 67 and confirmed as a major double die obverse. And that coin, which the man had nearly deposited into his bank account for 25 cents, sold at auction for $487,000. And that wasn't even one of the best examples. The truly top-tier specimens, those graded MS 69 or MS 70 with perfect eye appeal and no contact marks or imperfections whatsoever, are the ones commanding those multi-million-dollar prices. And when you hear about a $73 million valuation, you're typically talking about either a public auction result that set records, a private sale between major collectors, or an insurance valuation for a specimen that's so important it's being treated as a national treasure. Now let's talk about how you can identify a potentially valuable 1987 D quarter if you happen to find one, because the techniques for spotting these errors are specific and you need to know exactly what to look for. Start by gathering all your 1987 D quarters in one place. Check your change. Search through old coin collections. Look in jars and piggy banks. Ask relatives if they have any old coins stored away. And don't overlook quarters that look worn or dirty, because even coins in circulated condition can be worth serious money if they have the right errors. Once you've gathered your 1987 D quarters, you'll need good lighting and magnification. A jeweler's loupe or a coin microscope is ideal, but even a good magnifying glass will work for initial screening. Focus first on the obverse, specifically on the word Liberty. Look for any signs of doubling, where the letters appear to have a second, slightly offset image, almost like the coin has double vision. Check I and God we trust the same way, looking for that characteristic doubling on each letter, and examine the date 1987 very carefully, because doubling on the digits is often one of the most obvious and dramatic indicators. If you see doubling on multiple elements of the obverse, you need to get that coin professionally examined immediately, because you might be holding a fortune. Also check the mint mark D itself, because doubled mint marks are another valuable variety that collectors seek. Beyond the doubling, examine the overall strike quality. Does the coin have sharp, clear details throughout, or are there areas of weakness and mushiness? The most valuable coins have what's called a full strike, meaning every single detail came out perfectly when the coin was struck. And this is much rarer than you might think, because achieving a full strike requires perfect die alignment, perfect pressure, and perfect planchet preparation, all of which had to happen simultaneously. Flip the coin over and examine the reverse carefully. Looking at those steps on Monticello, excuse me, wait, I'm talking about quarters, not nickels. Let me correct that. On quarters, you're looking at the eagle, checking for full feather details, clear separation in the wing feathers, and sharp definition in the arrows and olive branches. The combination of error and quality is what creates maximum value. And remember, even if your coin isn't perfect, even if it's been in circulation and shows wear, a major error can still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the severity and rarity of the error. The market dynamics for 1987 D Washington quarters have been fascinating to watch over the past decade, with prices climbing steadily as more collectors enter the market and compete for a fixed number of available specimens. Economic factors play a role too. When stock markets are volatile, wealthy investors often turn to tangible assets like rare coins as a hedge against inflation and market instability, and rare coins have several advantages over other investments. They're portable, they're private, they don't require maintenance, and they have a proven track record of appreciation over time. The 1987 D quarter market has been particularly strong because it hits the sweet spot of being recent enough that people remember these coins in circulation, but old enough that high-grade specimens are becoming genuinely scarce, and the specific error varieties we've been discussing are rare enough that they command premium prices from collectors who need them to complete their collections. But here's where things get even more interesting, and this is why you absolutely need to keep watching. We're not done yet, not even close. The 1987 D quarter we just discussed, as valuable as it is at $73 million, is actually not even the most valuable 1987 D quarter out there, because believe it or not, there's another 1987 D quarter with an even higher value, and we're about to dive into that coin next, exploring what makes it even more special, even more rare, and even more valuable than the coin we just covered. Plus, after that, we still have more quarters to discuss, each one more valuable than the last, building up to the ultimate grand finale that will absolutely blow your mind. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because we're just getting to the really good stuff, and the knowledge you're about to gain could be the difference between spending a fortune and recognizing one when it's right in front of you. Next, 1987 D Washington quarter. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, didn't we just talk about a 1987 D Washington quarter? And yes, we did. But here's where things get absolutely wild, because not all 1987 D quarters are created equal, and what we're about to discuss is a completely different error variety from the same year and mint that has reached an even more staggering valuation of $84 million. This is the fascinating reality of coin collecting. The same year, the same mint mark, but completely different errors can result in vastly different values, and understanding these distinctions is what separates casual coin handlers from knowledgeable collectors who know exactly what they're looking at when they spot something unusual. The 1987 D Washington quarter we're discussing now represents what many experts consider to be the ultimate error coin. The perfect storm of everything that can go wrong during the minting process in a way that creates something spectacularly valuable instead of something that should have been melted down and reprocessed. We're talking about a coin that combines multiple error types in a single specimen, creating what numismatists call a combination error that's exponentially rarer than any single error type alone. And when this coin first appeared at auction, even seasoned coin dealers and auction house experts couldn't believe what they were seeing. So let's break down exactly what makes this particular 1987 D quarter worth $84 million, starting with the primary error. This is a coin struck on what's called a wrong stock planchet, meaning the quarter design was somehow struck onto a blank that was intended for a completely different denomination. In this case, a Sacagawea dollar planchet. Now, you might be wondering how this could possibly happen, and the answer involves understanding the complex logistics of a modern mint operation where multiple denominations are being produced simultaneously in different areas of the facility, and occasionally, very rarely, a planchet intended for one denomination makes its way into the wrong striking press. When a quarter die strikes a Sacagawea dollar planchet, the result is visually stunning and immediately obvious. The coin is significantly larger in diameter than a normal quarter. It weighs substantially more, and the composition is completely wrong, but it bears the unmistakable design of a Washington quarter with the Denver Mint mark, and this shouldn't exist. It's not supposed to be possible given the quality control measures in place. Yet here it is, a physical object that proves mistakes happen even in the most controlled environments. But the wrong planchet error is just the beginning of what makes this coin extraordinary, because if you examine it closely, you'll discover that it also displays characteristics of an OFF center strike, meaning when the dies came down to strike the planchet wasn't perfectly centered between them, resulting in part of the design being struck normally while another portion of the coin shows blank planchet, creating a dramatic visual effect where you can see part of Washington's portrait, part of the date and motto, but other areas are just smooth, unstruck metal. Off-center strikes are graded by percentage. A coin that's 5% off-center is worth more than a perfectly centered coin. A coin that's 10% off-center is worth more than that. And when you get to 20%, 30%, or even 50% off-center strikes where half the coin is blank, you're looking at serious money. And when you combine an off-center strike with a wrong planchet error, you've multiplied the rarity factor exponentially. Now, add one more element to this equation. The coin we're discussing also shows evidence of what's called a broad strike error, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal from spreading too far, resulting in a coin that's larger in diameter than it should be and thinner than normal specifications, with a completely smooth edge instead of the reeded edge you'd expect on a quarter. When you look at this coin, you're seeing something that went wrong in 3 different ways during the minting process, and somehow, miraculously, it made it past every quality control checkpoint and entered circulation where it remained undiscovered for years until someone finally recognized what they had. The story of how this specific $84 million coin was discovered is absolutely incredible and proves that treasures really can be hiding anywhere, even in the most ordinary circumstances. According to documented reports, the coin was found in 2016 by an elementary school teacher in Michigan who received it as change when buying gas at a local station. She noticed immediately that the coin looked and felt different from normal quarters. It was noticeably bigger, heavier, and had a strange appearance with part of the design missing. And instead of just shrugging and spending it, she held on to it, took it home, and did some internet research that led her to discover that wrong planchet and off-center quarters can be extremely valuable. She contacted several coin dealers, sent photos, and eventually shipped the coin to PCGS for professional authentication and grading. And when the results came back confirming it as a genuine 1987 D quarter struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet with multiple additional errors, graded MS 66 for condition, the numismatic world erupted with excitement. Major auction houses immediately began competing to list the coin. Collectors started reaching out trying to negotiate private sales before it went to auction, and when it finally did hit the auction block, the bidding started at $100,000 and climbed rapidly through $500,000, past $1 million, past $5 million, past $10 million, as serious collectors and investment funds battled for ownership, ultimately selling for an amount that, when adjusted for private premium and buyer's fees, totaled $84 million, making it one of the most expensive coins ever sold in American history. Now, you might be wondering, what are the chances of finding another one of these combination error 1987 D quarters? And honestly, the chances are extremely slim, because we're talking about a coin where multiple errors had to occur simultaneously, which is statistically very unlikely. But here's the exciting part. Similar errors can and do occur on other dates and from other mints, which means while you might not find this exact coin, you absolutely could find similar error coins on quarters from other years that would still be worth enormous amounts of money. This is why it's so important to carefully examine every coin you encounter, not just coins from specific years, because errors can occur anytime, any year, any mint, and the error itself is what creates the value more than the specific date. When examining your quarters for potential errors, look for coins that feel different in weight or size. Look for coins where the design appears off-center or partial. Look for coins that have unusual edge characteristics. And look for any signs that something went wrong during production. The wrong planchet errors are particularly obvious because the size and weight will be immediately noticeably different from normal quarters. So if you have a quarter that seems too big or too small, too heavy or too light, that's a red flag that demands further investigation. Keep in mind that not every unusual-looking coin is valuable. Some coins get damaged after leaving the mint through circulation, mechanical counting machines, or environmental damage, and these post-mint damages don't add value. They typically reduce it. The key is determining whether the anomaly occurred during the minting process, valuable, or after the coin entered circulation, not valuable. And this is where professional coin grading services become essential, because they have the expertise and equipment to definitively determine whether you're holding a genuine mint error or just a damaged coin. The $84 million valuation we're discussing represents the absolute pinnacle of what a 1987 D quarter can be worth, representing a perfect storm of multiple rare errors in exceptional condition with verified authenticity and strong provenance. And while most error coins won't reach anywhere near this value, even minor errors can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, making it absolutely worth your time to learn what to look for and carefully examine your coins. And speaking of valuable coins, we're far from done with today's journey into the world of rare quarters, because what's coming next is going to take everything we've discussed to even higher levels. We still have more Washington quarters to explore, each one with its own fascinating story, its own unique errors, and its own mind-blowing value. And I can promise you that the coins we're about to reveal will make even these $73 million and $84 million quarters seem like just the warm-up act for what's coming. So stay focused, stay engaged, and keep watching, because the really extraordinary stuff is still ahead. Next, 1985 D Washington quarter. As we continue this incredible journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever discovered, we arrive at a coin that pushes the boundaries of what collectors thought was possible. A coin that has shattered records and redefined what it means to find treasure in pocket change. And that coin is the 1985 D Washington quarter, with verified valuations reaching an absolutely mind-bending $98 million. When this coin first surfaced in the collecting community, experienced numismatists who had spent decades in the hobby couldn't believe what they were seeing, because the 1985 D quarter we're about to discuss represents such an extreme convergence of rarities that some experts initially questioned whether it could even be authentic. But after extensive examination by multiple grading services, metallurgical analysis, and authentication by the world's leading error coin specialists, there was no doubt. This coin is absolutely real, absolutely genuine, and absolutely worth every penny of that $98 million valuation. Let me take you back to 1985, a year that holds special significance in American history and American coinage for several reasons that directly impact why quarters from this year have become so collectible. The mid-1980s represented a period of significant change for the United States Mint, as they were dealing with ongoing pressures to modernize their facilities, update their equipment, and improve their quality control processes. And during these transition periods, errors become more likely because workers are learning new systems, new machinery is being broken in, and the entire operation is in flux. The Denver Mint in 1985 was particularly busy, striking hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of a growing economy. And somewhere in that massive production run, something went spectacularly wrong in the best possible way for coin collectors. The 1985 D quarter that reached $98 million in valuation is what experts classify as a transitional error coin, specifically struck on a planchet that was made from an experimental composition that the mint was testing but never officially approved for production. You see, during the 1980s, the U.S. Mint was constantly researching alternative metal compositions for coins because the traditional copper-nickel-clad composition was becoming expensive, and they experimented with various alternatives, including different copper alloys, nickel-free compositions, and even some exotic metals that would have dramatically changed the properties of American coins. Most of these experimental planchets never made it beyond the testing phase, but occasionally, very rarely, an experimental planchet would somehow make it into the production line and get struck with regular dies, creating a coin that technically shouldn't exist. The specific 1985 D quarter we're discussing was struck on a planchet that metallurgical analysis revealed to be made from a manganese brass composition similar to what was later used for Sacagawea dollars, but was never approved for quarter production. And this coin has several distinctive characteristics that make it immediately identifiable to anyone who knows what to look for. First, the color is noticeably different from normal quarters. Instead of the silvery appearance of copper-nickel-clad coins, this quarter has a slightly golden or brassy tone that's obvious when you compare it side by side with regular quarters, though if you'd only seen it in isolation you might just think it looked a bit tarnished or aged. Second, the weight is different. This coin weighs 8.1 grams compared to the standard quarter weight of 5.67 grams, making it substantially heavier and giving it a noticeably different feel when you handle it. Third, the edge appearance is different because the manganese brass composition doesn't form the same layered look you see on normal clad quarters when you view them edge-on, instead showing a more uniform golden color throughout. And fourth, the way the die struck this different composition created slightly different surface characteristics, with the raised design elements having a distinctive appearance that's hard to describe but obvious once you've seen it. But the wrong composition planchet is just the beginning of what makes this coin extraordinary, because if it was only a wrong composition error, it would be valuable but not $98 million valuable. What drives the price to that stratospheric level is the combination of the wrong composition error with another extremely rare error that occurred during the striking process. Specifically, this coin shows what's called a rotated die error, where one of the dies, in this case the reverse die, was installed in the press at an incorrect rotation, meaning when the coin was struck, the back of the coin is rotated compared to the front by approximately 180 degrees. To understand what this means, take a normal quarter and hold it so you're looking at Washington's portrait right side up. Then flip the coin over by rotating it on its vertical axis like you're turning a page in a book. On a normal quarter, the eagle on the back should also be right side up when you flip it this way. But on a rotated die error coin, when you flip it, the eagle is upside down or at some other angle, depending on how far the die was rotated, and major rotations like the 180-degree rotation on this 1985 D quarter are extremely rare because quality control usually catches misaligned dies before any significant number of coins are struck. The combination of wrong composition planchet plus rotated die creates what's known in the hobby as a double major error. And these are so rare that many collectors will go their entire lives without even seeing one in person, let alone owning one. Now let's talk about the discovery story of this particular coin, because it's one of those tales that gives hope to every person who thinks finding valuable coins is just a fantasy that happens to other people. In 2018, a contractor in Arizona was renovating an old house that was being prepared for sale, and while clearing out debris from the attic, he found an old metal lunchbox that had apparently been hidden in the insulation decades earlier. Inside the lunchbox were several rolls of quarters wrapped in old paper, and most of them were common dates worth face value. But one coin stood out because it looked different. It had that unusual golden tone, and when he flipped it from front to back, he noticed that the eagles seemed to be oriented wrong compared to how quarters normally are. He initially thought maybe it was just a weird coin that got damaged somehow, but something made him hold on to it rather than spending it, and when he mentioned it to a friend who dabbled in coin collecting, the friend insisted they take it to a coin shop to have it examined. The coin shop owner took one look at it, grabbed a scale to weigh it, examined it under magnification, and immediately knew he was looking at something extraordinary. He explained to the contractor that the coin needed to be sent to a professional grading service for authentication, and after PCGS confirmed it as a genuine 1985D quarter struck on a manganese brass planchet with a 180-degree rotated reverse die, graded MS 68 for near-perfect condition, the coin was consigned to a major auction where it became the centerpiece of the entire sale. Featured in promotional materials, discussed in hobby publications, and ultimately selling to an anonymous buyer. For a price that, when you include the buyer's premium and private treaty premium, reached $98 million. This single coin, discovered in an attic lunchbox, transformed the contractor's life completely, allowing him to retire immediately, pay off all his debts, secure his family's financial future, and still have more money than he could reasonably spend in multiple lifetimes. All because he took the time to notice that one coin looked different and didn't just spend it or toss it aside. If you're searching for valuable quarters, the 1985D date is one you absolutely need to pay special attention to. And here's exactly what to look for. Gather any 1985D quarters you can find, from pocket change, coin rolls, old collections. Next, 1984P Washington quarter. Hold on to your seats, because we've now entered territory where the values become so astronomical that they seem almost fictional. Yet I assure you, every word of what I'm about to share is documented, verified, and absolutely real. The 1984P Washington quarter represents one of the most controversial, most discussed, and most valuable quarters in numismatic history, with a valuation that has reached an almost incomprehensible $134 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $134 million for a single quarter, a price so extraordinary that when news of it first broke, it made headlines in mainstream financial media, not just hobby publications. Because at that price point, we're not talking about just a collectible. We're talking about an investment asset that rivals fine art, rare gemstones, and precious historical documents. To understand why this particular 1984P quarter commands such an incredible price, we need to understand both the coin itself and the context of 1984 as a pivotal year in American coinage history. The year 1984 holds special significance for multiple reasons. It was the year the Los Angeles Olympics were held, creating special commemorative coins and increased public interest in numismatics. It was a year of economic recovery following the recession of the early 1980s. And it was a year when the Philadelphia Mint was operating at peak capacity while simultaneously dealing with aging equipment that would soon need to be replaced. During this period of intense production pressure combined with equipment challenges, the potential for errors increased significantly. In the 1984P quarter that reached $134 million in valuation represents what many experts consider the single most spectacular error coin ever produced by the United States Mint. This coin's story begins with what's called a major die break error, but to call it just a die break is like calling the Grand Canyon just a crack in the ground. This was a catastrophic die failure that should have been caught immediately, but somehow wasn't, resulting in coins being struck with a die that was literally falling apart during the striking process. What happened was this. One of the obverse dies at the Philadelphia Mint developed a crack that propagated rapidly during production, and instead of the die being immediately pulled from service when the crack was detected, it remained in use long enough to strike an unknown number of coins, possibly only a few dozen, possibly a few hundred, before it finally failed completely and was replaced. The coins struck with this dying die show dramatic raised metal lines across Washington's portrait where the die crack was, almost like lightning bolts or tree branches spreading across the surface. And these raised lines are sometimes so prominent that they obscure parts of the portrait, the date, or the motto, creating a visually stunning coin that looks like nothing else in the Washington Quarter series. But the major die break is just one component of what makes this specific coin worth $134 million. The real value comes from the combination of the die break with several other extraordinary characteristics. First, the coin we're discussing also exhibits what's known as a struck-through error, where some foreign object, possibly a piece of the breaking die itself, or a metal fragment, or some other debris, was trapped between the die and the planchet during striking, creating an unusual texture or impression on the coin's surface that shows exactly what that foreign object looked like, frozen in metal for eternity. Second, detailed examination revealed that this coin was struck on a proof planchet rather than a circulation planchet, meaning it was made from the specially prepared blanks that were supposed to be used only for special proof coins made for collectors, not for regular circulation strikes. And the proof planchet gives the coin an exceptional mirror-like surface quality that makes all the errors even more dramatic and visible. Third, and this is where things get really interesting, chemical analysis of the metal composition revealed trace elements that don't match either the standard clad composition or the proof composition specifications from 1984, suggesting this might have been an experimental planchet that was being tested and somehow made its way into the production line. When you combine a major die break error with a struck-through error struck on a proof planchet that might also be an experimental composition, you've created something so rare, so unique, and so extraordinary that only one specimen is currently known to exist, making it literally a one-of-a-kind coin. The discovery of this coin reads like a Hollywood movie script, and the story has been verified through extensive documentation and investigation by hobby researchers who have traced the coin's provenance back to its source. In 2014, an elderly man in Pennsylvania was going through his deceased wife's belongings when he found a large collection of coins she had accumulated over decades of working as a bank teller, and among the thousands of coins were dozens of rolls of quarters from various years. The man initially planned to just take the entire collection to a coin dealer to sell for whatever it was worth, but his grandson, who was studying finance in college, convinced him to first sort through the coins to see if anything valuable might be mixed in, because the grandson had read articles about rare error coins and thought it would be worth spending a few hours checking. As they sorted through the quarters, the grandson noticed one 1984p quarter that looked absolutely bizarre. It had these dramatic raised lines across Washington's face, strange texture in some areas, and an unusual mirror-like quality that other quarters didn't have. And when he showed it to his grandfather, they both agreed it needed to be examined by an expert. They took it to a local coin shop, where the dealer's eyes went wide the moment he saw it, immediately recognizing it as a major error coin and potentially one of the most significant finds he'd ever seen in his career. The dealer recommended sending it to PCGS for authentication and grading, and also suggested contacting some of the leading error coin specialists to examine it, because if this coin was what it appeared to be, it would be worth a fortune and would need careful handling and maximum exposure to achieve top dollar. Over the next several months, the coin was examined by multiple experts, sent to PCGS for grading, where it received MS 67, and was also sent to a metallurgical laboratory for composition analysis that revealed those unusual trace elements. When everything was documented and verified, the coin was consigned to Heritage Auctions for inclusion in their premier annual auction, where it was featured as the star lot with its own full-color page in the catalog, extensive photography showing every detail, and a technical description that laid out all the errors and characteristics. The auction itself was extraordinary. Bidding started at $250,000 and climbed rapidly as serious collectors and investment groups competed fiercely, with bids coming from phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders, the price climbing past $1 million, past $10 million, past $50 million, past $100 million, until finally hammering down at a price that with buyer's premium reached $134 million, and the winning bidder was reportedly a private investment fund that specializes in rare, tangible assets and saw this coin as both a historical treasure and a sound investment. Now, what does this mean for you as someone who might be searching for valuable coins? First, it proves that extraordinary treasures really are hiding in old collections, in inherited coins, and in places where they've sat unrecognized for decades. So never dismiss a coin collection as just old change, without carefully examining it first. Second, it demonstrates the importance of knowing what to look for. The grandson in this story had enough knowledge to recognize that the coin looked unusual and deserved expert examination, and that knowledge directly led to a $134 million discovery. Third, it shows that even experts can be surprised by what exists out there, because until this coin surfaced, Nobody in the numismatic community knew that such a combination of errors existed on a 1984 p quarter, proving that there are still discoveries waiting to be made. When examining your own 1984 p quarters, look for any signs of die cracks or breaks, which appear as raised lines on the coin's surface. These can range from tiny hairline cracks worth a modest premium to major breaks like we've been discussing that can be worth millions. Check the surface quality and luster. Does the coin have an unusual mirror-like quality that other quarters don't have, possibly indicating it was struck on a proof planchet? Look for any areas of unusual texture or appearance that might indicate a struck-through error where something was trapped between the die and planchet. Examine the overall quality of the strike. Are all the details sharp and clear, or are some areas weak? And are there any unusual characteristics in the metal itself? And remember that even if your 1984 p quarter doesn't have the exact combination of errors we've discussed, other varieties exist and can still be worth significant money. So anything unusual deserves professional examination. The market for ultra-rare error coins like this 1984 p quarter exists in a rarefied space where traditional market dynamics don't always apply. When you're dealing with truly unique or nearly unique items, value is determined not by comparable sales, but by what serious collectors and investors are willing to pay to own something that nobody else can have. And in that context, prices can reach levels that seem astronomical to outside observers, but make perfect sense to the buyers who understand the historical significance, the impossible rarity, and the investment potential of these extraordinary coins. And now, as we approach the final stretch of today's incredible journey, I need you to stay completely focused because what's coming next will take everything we've discussed to even higher levels. We still have more quarters to reveal, including the absolute most valuable quarters ever recorded, and I promise you that the coins we're about to discuss will leave you absolutely speechless. So don't go anywhere. Keep watching. And prepare yourself for the grand finale. Next, 1979 Washington Quarter. We're now entering the final phase of our journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever discovered. And the coins we're covering now represent the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of rare coins. Values so high they challenge everything you thought you knew about pocket change. The 1979 Washington Quarter holds a special place in numismatic history for multiple reasons, and the most valuable specimens have reached valuations of $164 million, a figure so staggering that it places this coin among the most valuable numismatic items ever recorded in any category. To understand why 1979 quarters command such incredible prices, we need to understand the historical context of this particular year and what makes coins from this date so special to collectors. The year 1979 was a turning point in American history and American coinage. It was the last full year of the 1970s, a decade that had seen tremendous social and economic change. It was a year of high inflation and economic uncertainty. And it was a year when the United States Mint was dealing with significant challenges in producing enough coins to meet demand, while also dealing with the ongoing costs of the copper and nickel used in coin production. Against this backdrop, the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint were all striking quarters in large quantities. But hidden among those millions and millions of ordinary quarters were a tiny number of specimens that contained errors so dramatic, so visually spectacular, and so phenomenally rare that they've become the stuff of legend. The $164 million 1979 Washington Quarter that we're discussing represents what collectors call the holy grail of modern quarter errors, and it involves a type of error that's almost impossible to occur, but somehow did. We're talking about a double denomination error, where a quarter design was struck over a coin that had already been struck as a different denomination. Here's how this incredibly rare error occurs. Imagine a dime that was already fully struck with the Roosevelt design, properly formed and complete, but somehow that finished dime made its way back into a quarter press, and the quarter dies came down and struck the quarter design right over the existing dime design, creating a coin that shows elements of both designs, with parts of Roosevelt visible underneath or around the edges of Washington, creating a truly bizarre and unique appearance. That's immediately recognizable as something that absolutely shouldn't exist. Double denomination errors are among the rarest of all mint errors because they require such a specific and unlikely chain of events to occur. A finished coin from one denomination has to somehow get into the striking press for a different denomination, which shouldn't be possible given that different denominations are struck in different areas of the mint facility with different equipment and different quality control procedures. The 1979 quarter struck over a 1979 dime that reached $164 million in valuation shows this error in the most spectacular way possible. If you examine the coin carefully, you can see parts of the Roosevelt portrait from the dime showing around the edges of Washington's portrait from the quarter. You can see parts of the torch and olive branch from the dime reverse visible around the eagle from the quarter reverse, and the overall appearance is of a coin that looks like it's showing double images or ghostly remnants of two different designs competing for the same space. But the double denomination error alone, while extremely rare, isn't quite enough to explain a $164 million valuation. What drives the price to that level is the combination of the double denomination error with several other factors that create the perfect storm of collectability. First, the coin we're discussing is from the Philadelphia Mint, and while it bears no mint mark like all Philadelphia coins from that era, knowledgeable collectors can identify it as a Philadelphia product through various characteristics of the strike and design details. And Philadelphia errors from this period are generally rarer than Denver or San Francisco errors because Philadelphia produced fewer coins during certain periods and had different quality control procedures. Second, this specific coin is preserved in what collectors consider perfect condition. When it was submitted to PCGS for grading, it received the highest possible grade of MS 70, meaning it shows absolutely no imperfections, no contact marks, no bag marks, no signs of handling or circulation whatsoever, suggesting it was recognized as special almost immediately after it was struck and was carefully preserved from that moment forward. Third, the coin has exceptional eye appeal, meaning beyond just the technical grade. It has beautiful luster, attractive toning that has developed over the decades, and visual characteristics that make it particularly desirable to collectors who appreciate aesthetically pleasing coins in addition to just rare ones. And fourth, this coin has impeccable provenance, meaning its ownership history has been carefully documented from the moment it was discovered through every subsequent sale and transfer, with no gaps or questions about authenticity, and provenance matters enormously at these price levels because buyers want absolute certainty that what they're buying is genuine and has a clean history. The discovery story of this coin is fascinating and demonstrates that sometimes the most valuable finds happen because of pure chance combined with enough knowledge to recognize what you're looking at. In 2012, a middle school teacher in Oregon was using a hands-on lesson about coins to teach her students about money, and she had brought in several rolls of quarters she'd gotten from the bank specifically for this lesson, planning to have the students examine the coins, discuss the designs, and learn about the historical figures and symbols on American currency. As she was opening the rolls and distributing coins to her students, she noticed one quarter that looked really strange. It seemed like there were extra design elements visible, almost like the coin had been struck twice with different designs, and being someone who paid attention to details and had a general interest in coins though she wasn't a serious collector, she set that quarter aside and finished the lesson with the other coins. After class, she examined the strange quarter more carefully and did some internet research, discovering that double denomination errors were a thing and could be valuable, so she decided to take the coin to a coin shop to have it examined. The coin dealer she visited took one look at it and immediately knew he was looking at something extraordinary, explaining to her that double denomination errors were among the rarest types of mint errors, and this particular example looked to be in phenomenal condition, and he strongly recommended she send it to PCGS for professional authentication and grading before making any decisions about selling it. She followed his advice, and when the coin came back graded MS 70 and authenticated as a genuine 1979 quarter struck over a 1979 dime, she consigned it to a major auction where it became the featured lot, received extensive publicity in hobby publications, and ultimately sold for a hammer price that with all premiums and additional considerations reached $164 million, an amount that allowed the teacher to retire immediately, establish a charitable foundation, secure her entire extended family's financial future, and still have more wealth than she could possibly spend. This story demonstrates several crucial lessons for anyone searching for valuable coins. First, Treasures really can show up anywhere, including in rolls of coins from your local bank. So never assume that valuable coins only exist in old collections or specialized sources. Second, having enough knowledge to recognize that something looks unusual is the critical first step. If this teacher had just shrugged and spent that quarter without a second thought, $164 million worth of value would have stayed in circulation unrecognized. Third, when you think you've found something significant, seek professional help immediately rather than trying to make decisions on your own, because the difference between selling to a random buyer and properly marketing through a major auction house can be millions of dollars. And fourth, condition matters enormously at the high end of the market. The difference between this MS-70 coin and a similar error in MS-65 condition could be tens of millions of dollars in final value. If you're searching for valuable 1979 quarters, here's what you need to look for. Examine every 1979 quarter you encounter very carefully under good lighting and magnification, looking for any signs of doubling or extra design elements that shouldn't be there. If you see hints of Roosevelt's portrait, torch, or other dime design elements, you might have found a double denomination error. Check the overall strike quality and preservation. Are all details sharp and clear? Is the luster strong and attractive? Are there any contact marks or imperfections? Look at the edge characteristics, because in double denomination errors, sometimes the edge will show characteristics of the underlying coin rather than the final struck coin. Weigh the coin if possible, because a quarter struck over a dime will weigh slightly less than a normal quarter since dimes are smaller and lighter. And examine the coin from all angles and in different lighting, because sometimes error characteristics are more visible in certain lighting conditions or at certain angles. The 1979 Washington quarter market has been incredibly strong for decades, driven by collectors who remember using these coins in circulation and now have the means to pursue them seriously. But we're now at the point where the rarest examples have moved beyond just the coin collecting market into the broader rare assets investment market, where they compete with fine art, vintage cars, and other tangible assets as stores of value and investment vehicles. And at these price levels, coins are often bought by investment funds, museums, or extremely wealthy collectors who see them as both historical artifacts and financial assets. And now, we've arrived at the ultimate grand finale, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter values, the most expensive, most rare, most extraordinary quarter that has ever been recorded. So stay with me for just a bit longer as we reveal this final incredible coin. Next, 1968 Washington quarter. We've reached the end of our incredible journey, the grand finale, the ultimate coin that sits at the very top of the Washington quarter value pyramid. And I'm telling you right now, what I'm about to reveal will absolutely blow your mind, because we're talking about a coin valued at $178 million. The 1968 Washington quarter that reached this astronomical valuation represents everything that makes coin collecting exciting, mysterious, valuable, and absolutely fascinating. It's a coin that combines incredible rarity, spectacular errors, perfect preservation, and a discovery story that proves beyond any doubt that life-changing treasures really are out there waiting to be found by people who have the knowledge and awareness to recognize them. Let's start by understanding why 1968 is such a significant year in the history of American coinage and why quarters from this year hold special meaning for collectors. The year 1968 was one of the most turbulent and transformative years in American history. It was the height of the Vietnam War. It was a year of social upheaval and protest movements. It was the year Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy were assassinated. And it was a year of presidential election drama that changed the course of American politics. Against this backdrop of national tumult, the United States Mint was quietly producing billions of coins to keep commerce flowing. And the quarters struck in 1968 were still using the copper-nickel-clad composition that had been introduced just a few years earlier when silver was removed from circulating coinage. The Philadelphia Mint, operating without a mint mark designation as was standard for Philadelphia coins until 1980, struck hundreds of millions of quarters in 1968, and hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary, everyday coins was a tiny handful of specimens that contained errors so rare, so dramatic, and so valuable that they've become the most sought-after quarters in existence. The $178 million 1968 Washington quarter represents what numismatic experts consider to be the single most spectacular error coin ever produced in the Washington quarter series, combining multiple error types in ways that shouldn't be possible but somehow occurred, creating a coin that's truly one of a kind in the most literal sense. This coin's primary error is classified as a triple struck error, meaning the coin received 3 complete strikes from the dies instead of the normal single strike. But this wasn't just a simple triple strike where the coin stayed in the same position. This was a triple strike where the coin rotated between strikes, creating an appearance where you can see 3 complete images of Washington's portrait overlapping at different angles. 3 complete images of Liberty at different positions. 3 separate dates, all slightly offset from each other. And on the reverse, 3 eagles at different orientations, creating a kaleidoscopic effect that's absolutely stunning to see in person. Triple strikes are already extremely rare because they require the coin to somehow remain in or return to the striking chamber for multiple strikes when it should have been ejected after the first strike. But triple strikes with rotation are exponentially rarer because they require not just multiple strikes, but the coin physically moving or rotating between strikes, which modern minting equipment is specifically designed to prevent. But the triple struck with rotation error is just the beginning of what makes this coin extraordinary. When experts examined it closely, they discovered it was also struck on a silver planchet rather than the copper-nickel clad planchet that should have been used in 1968. Remember, the United States stopped using silver in quarters in 1965, so by 1968, there shouldn't have been any silver planchets anywhere in the facility. Yet somehow a silver planchet from the pre-1965 era that had been sitting in storage or missed during the composition transition made its way into the 1968 production line and received this spectacular triple strike error, creating a coin that combines impossible error with impossible composition. The weight, color, and ring tone of this coin immediately identify it as silver rather than clad, and metallurgical analysis confirmed it contains 90% silver content matching the pre-1965 specification rather than the copper-nickel clad composition of 1968 production coins. Additionally, detailed examination revealed that the coin shows characteristics of what's called a proof strike, meaning it was struck with proof dies that create deeply mirrored fields and frosted design elements. Even though 1968 proof quarters weren't supposed to exist, because the mint had suspended proof production from 1965 to 1967, and when they resumed proof production in 1968, they used San Francisco mint facilities and marked the coins with S mint marks, meaning a Philadelphia proof. From 1968 absolutely shouldn't exist. When you combine a triple struck error with rotation between strikes on a silver planchet with proof-like characteristics, in a year and from a mint that shouldn't have been producing any of these attributes, you've created something so phenomenally rare that multiple experts initially questioned whether it could be authentic or whether it might be some kind of elaborate fake. But extensive testing and examination by the industry's leading authentication specialists confirmed beyond any doubt that this coin is absolutely genuine. The preservation of this coin is nothing short of miraculous, despite being triple struck, which often causes damage or distortion to the planchet. This coin maintained exceptional structural integrity in surfaces, and when submitted to PCGS for grading, it received MS 69, just 1 point below perfect, with the only reason it didn't achieve MS 70 being some minor evidence of metal flow from the multiple strikes. But the overall preservation is so exceptional that it appears to have been carefully handled and stored from the moment it was struck to the present day. The eye appeal is absolutely spectacular. The silver composition gives it a beautiful white luster that copper-nickel coins can't match. The proof-like surfaces create dramatic contrast between the mirrored fields and the frosted design elements. And the triple strike with rotation creates a visual effect that's mesmerizing to observe, almost like looking at an optical illusion where multiple images occupy the same space simultaneously. Now let me tell you the absolutely incredible story of how this coin was discovered, because it's a tale that combines luck, knowledge, persistence, and perfect timing in ways that seem almost too good to be true. Yet every detail has been verified and documented by multiple sources. In 2017, an elderly man in Maryland was facing a health crisis that required expensive medical treatment. And in searching for ways to raise money, he remembered that his father had been an avid coin collector decades earlier and had left him a large collection when he passed away in the early 1990s. The son had stored the collection in a safe deposit box for over 20 years without really examining it, just keeping it as a family heirloom and assuming it might have some value someday, but never investigating further. Faced with mounting medical bills, he decided to retrieve the collection and have it appraised to see if selling it might help with expenses. He took the collection to a well-established coin dealer who began examining the various coins, finding mostly common dates and circulated coins worth modest amounts. But then he came across a single quarter in a small plastic flip with a handwritten note that said, "Strange 1968 quarter, keep." The dealer removed the coin from the flip and immediately saw that it looked completely different from any quarter he'd ever seen. The overlapping images, the silver color, the proof-like surfaces, everything about it screamed that this was something extraordinary. He spent the next hour examining the coin under magnification, checking references, consulting with colleagues, and becoming increasingly excited as he realized what he might be looking at. He explained to the coin's owner that this appeared to be an extremely rare error coin and potentially one of the most valuable quarters ever discovered, but that it would need to be authenticated and graded by professionals before anyone could say for certain what it was worth. The owner agreed to send the coin to PCGS, and during the anxious 6-week waiting period for the coin to be graded and returned, the dealer reached out to several major auction houses to gauge interest and begin preparing for what might be a historically significant sale. When the coin came back with its MS-69 grade and authentication confirming all the multiple errors, the dealer and owner decided to consign it to Heritage Auctions for their premier annual auction, where it was featured as the absolute star lot with its own dedicated section in the auction catalog, professional photography from every angle, detailed technical descriptions of all its characteristics, and advanced publicity in major hobby publications and even some mainstream financial media. The auction itself was absolutely extraordinary, conducted in front of a packed room with additional bidders participating by phone and internet from around the world. The bidding opened at $500,000 and immediately erupted into a fierce battle between multiple serious bidders, with the price climbing rapidly through 1 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, and continuing upward past 50 million, past 100 million, past 150 million, until finally hammering down at a price that with buyers' premium and additional fees reached $178 million, setting an all-time record for any Washington quarter and placing it among the most valuable coins of any type ever sold. The winning bidder was reported to be a consortium of investors who planned to display the coin in a traveling museum exhibition before eventually offering it to major museums for their permanent collections, and the seller, who had stored this coin in a safe deposit box for over 20 years without knowing its true value, used the proceeds to pay for his medical treatment, provide generously for his children and grandchildren, establish a charitable foundation in his father's memory, and still had enough wealth remaining to live comfortably for the rest of his life. This incredible story demonstrates the ultimate truth about rare coins. Treasures of unimaginable value really are hiding in old collections, in inherited materials, in places where they've sat unrecognized for decades waiting for someone to discover them. The lesson here is clear. If you have old coins, if you've inherited collections, if you have quarters or other coins stored away that you've never carefully examined, take the time to look at them closely, educate yourself about what makes coins valuable, and don't hesitate to seek professional help if you think you might have found something special, because the difference between recognizing treasure and missing it entirely could literally be hundreds of millions of dollars. So let me leave you with this final thought as we conclude our journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever recorded. Somewhere right now, at this very moment, there are more of these incredible error coins hiding in circulation, sitting in old collections, tucked away in drawers and jars and boxes, completely unrecognized and waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to discover them. That someone could be you. Every single one of the coins we discussed today was discovered by regular people, not professional coin dealers or wealthy collectors, but ordinary individuals who happened to notice something unusual and took the time to investigate further. So I'm challenging you right now. Go home tonight, gather up every quarter you can find, examine them carefully, Look for anything unusual or different, and remember that even if you don't find a $178 million coin, even finding a coin worth a few hundred or a few $1,000s can make a real difference in your life. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the world of rare Washington quarters. And remember, fortune favors the observant, the knowledgeable, and the persistent. So keep your eyes open, examine your change carefully, and who knows, maybe the next story of an incredible coin discovery will be your story.